For everyone who's here, this is I'm Owen and I'm moderating the session, but this is Brian Teeman, the co-founder of Joomla, who knows a hell of a lot about accessibility and is going to give you a great talk today. I've never seen him do a bad talk, to be fair. It's always interesting. So you guys have done the right thing by picking to see him today. Brian, take it away.
The title of the talk is Do the Right Thing, a practical guide to building accessible websites with Joomla, which sounded a great title when I came up with it. The reality is that this is a whole day's course that I do with the same title. So really, we've only got 45 minutes. So it's a very quick overview of a lot of the things, but hopefully we're going to, you're all going to come away at the end of this knowing a lot more than you did beforehand. So as Owen said, my name's Brian. I'm the co-founder of Joomla. I'm a very active contributor, especially over the last couple of years in the area of accessibility. And recently, the whole lockdown period, I've been working exclusively on accessibility for a European Union research project. And then the last couple of months for an American organization with 3 letters, but I can't say who they are because it's being recorded. Right. So what is accessibility? So the German language has probably got this much better than English. And in German, the word they use is barrierefrei, which means free of barriers, or the removal of barriers so that everyone can use your website. And I think that's a much more descriptive term for what it actually is. It's not about doing extra things, it's about removing things, removing those barriers. There's 1 billion people in the world who have a permanent disability, which is actually 15% of the global population. So 15% is not a small number. It's not something that any website owner, any business can or should ignore. And I came across this tweet. I'm afraid I have no idea who Ray Campbell is, but he said that disability is the only minority group that anyone can join at any time. You just think about that. You may, all your life, you're 40 years old, never had any vision problems, perfect eyesight. Suddenly your eyesight goes. It's the only minority where this can happen. And the World Health Organization says that almost everyone will experience disability at some time in your life. So remember that 1 billion was people with permanent disabilities, doesn't include people who have got a temporary disability. And we'll see some examples of those a bit later on. As we're in the US, the law that governs accessibility in the US is the ADA, or the Americans with Disabilities Act. And this act defines a person with a disability as someone who has a physical or mental impairment that limits one or more major life activity. That's quite a broad definition. And as a result, it really should be much more, people should pay much more attention to satisfying this. There's quite a lot of people in Europe in the room, and the European regulations are very similarly worded to this. But the ADA applies to every single state and local government website and the website of any business that is open to the public. So that's most websites. And you'd be surprised at the end of this talk, I'll give you some homework and you can check some big sites and you'll see that they don't comply with the ADA. But even if you don't care about accessibility, I'm sure everyone in this room cares about SEO and usability of their websites. But the reality is that good SEO and good usability will give you an accessible website because they all go together. Chris Hellman, who some of you may have met, he's now the developer manager for Visual Studio Code, but previously for Firefox and Microsoft Edge, says that accessibility features, they're necessary for some people, but everyone's going to benefit from them. And hopefully by the end of this talk, you'll realize how, even if you don't see that you have any barriers in front of you from using the web, that you'll still benefit from some of the stuff I'm going to show you. So perhaps the most well-known accessibility thing that you've come across is image descriptions or alt descriptions. So it's said that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, it is if you can see the picture. But if you can't see the picture, you need to be given those 1,000 words. And the picture, we use a picture to enhance the contents. So when we give a picture a description, that should also enhance the content and not just be a literal description. So here we've got a picture of somebody with a backpack on. I think they're looking over some mountains. The description that we use will be different depending on the contents. AI is obviously the hot topic. If anybody's been using PowerPoint or Office recently and inserted an image, you'll see that Office has tried to identify the image and insert a description for you. If you're using Microsoft Edge, Edge will also insert a description. But again, a computer can only identify the elements in an image. It doesn't make it a description of how you are using that image in your contents. So I'm going to show you an example. This article about digital nomads, people who work remotely and live anywhere. So when I was putting this together, I was looking for some photos and I chose all 6 of these photos. And the text below each photo is the text that Microsoft Edge automatically chose as identifying and describing the picture. Now, apart from a few errors, such as the one on the bottom right, the 2 on the right, where they're looking at a laptop and not a book, and where the man is not on talking on a cell phone, the problem with all of them is it's not a description of the image of how I'm using it. So first of all, they're all gender neutral. They all say a person. And they're just talking about somebody sitting at a table with a computer. But when I actually use the image in the context of writing about people who can work remotely and live anywhere, what I really want to be saying about this picture is that it's a man working at a coffee shop table on their computer. So the other descriptions were all correct, descriptions of the photograph, but they were not correct descriptions of the image in its context. And so that's really important. There is an editor that's available for Joomla that when you insert an image will automatically take the file name and sort of mess around with it and turn it into an image description, an alt description. Complete garbage. You need to do, writing the image description is as important as writing the words in your contents. Now, Joomla helps you do it correctly. I've got screenshots here of the 3 major places where you might actually insert an image with Joomla. And you'll see 2 different things here. The first is that it's asking you for an image description or alt text or alternative description. And the second one is that there is an option called no description. For decorative image, no description required. Now, why is that important? So if the image doesn't add anything to the content, it's just a pretty flower on the page because your designer thought that was pretty. Sorry, Owen. You don't need a description for that one. But if you don't put an alt text in, then your accessibility checkers will fail. Also, if someone's using a screen reader, it will start to read out the file name, which might be DSC 20495, which is worse than nothing at all. So if you tick the box no description, Joomla will put code in, which is actually alt equals quote quote. And that way, the checker won't see the image, and neither will the screen reader. So you don't get that annoying. But of course, most of the time, you should, of course, be giving the image a proper description. And ticking that box, no description, that it's decorative when it isn't decorative, when it has meaning, is just as bad as not having any. So we'll see later, but Joomla has a built-in accessibility checker now as of 4.2. And what it can do is it will go through and it will look at your images, and it's looking for certain things. Now, the first image here, it passes because it has an alt text. The second one fails, and it gives you a helpful information about it. The third one, it says, warning, image whose alt text contains a suspicious stop word. What does that mean? It means that that alt text is probably picture of a bird. The problem with that is that when a screen reader comes along, the screen reader will already say image or picture or photo. So the screen reader will now say image of a bird. So this checker is actually really helpful, and it's preventing that double text or stuttering effects so that we can get a better description. But despite everything, Joomla can't fix stupid. I wish it could, but it can't. And one of the things I see a lot of is people putting text onto images. Or even worse, where actually they're sending you an advert for an event or an activity to put on your website, and all it is text that's been saved as a JPEG. Well, that is text placed on an image is just a colored pixel. It has no meaning. So I was looking for an example of this, and happened to be at Amazon. And this is slightly edited just so it fits on the screen, but this is the Amazon screenshot of Barack Obama's book, A Promised Land. And we can see we've got the photo top left of Barack Obama, which is actually the front cover of the book. And then we have these 3 quotes or reviews. Guess what? So there is no description at all for the book cover, but it is blank because they've put the alt equals blank blank. And for these, if you look, they do have alt text, woohoo, but they're all the same. They're all the same. They're all just the title of the book. If I go back to the text there, you can see these are important pieces of text, and they've been completely missed and replaced with identical alt text descriptions. Again, they're going to pass a check, but they fail the real world. So now let's have a look at headings. We should have structured and ordered headings because they help the user navigate the content. Let me show you. For those of us who can have good visual acuity, we can look at these two pages, and we can see that the one on the right has clearly defined areas of the page, and we can skim through them and find the bits that interest us. The one on the left is just a block of text, and you're going to have to read through the whole thing just to see if it's what you want. So let's have a look a bit closer at that. So here we have 2 articles. both in the Cassiopeia templates. Now, they look visually identical, but are they? Well, the one on the left, if I switch on the accessibility checker, down in the bottom here, is saying there is one heading, and it's the word headings there. The one on the right, however, has got 5. Level 1, level 2, level 3, and then another 2 and a level 3. If I look at the skip to generator, which we'll cover later, you'll see again in the page outline, it's just finding one heading as opposed to a complete outline of the contents. And that's what it should be. It should be an outline of your contents and not what's here on this side, which is just visually formatted information. So if I just show you that. Oh, before I show you that, if I was using a screen reader just as an example, I would be tabbing through the content to navigate my way around. I'd also be tabbing through if I was not using a mouse. So here on the left, we can only tab to one thing, the word headings, because that's the only semantic piece of markup. On the right, however, I can tab from headings to course information, details, etc. So why is this? It's a bit small, but I'm sure you can get the idea. On the left, the formatting for course details is span, style equals font size 24, font family Arial Helvetica Sans serif, and then strong on the course details. And on the right, it's just H3. So there's more than two, there's many reasons why the one on the right is better than the one on the left. The first one, of course, is that the one on the right is shorter. We're all lazy. We don't like to write lots of things when we could just write a few things. The one on the right, of course, therefore, is going to be more consistently applied throughout your websites. And you're not going to have different size, different headings on different pages. And of course, most importantly, we now have a semantic structure based on those H1, H2, H3 headings that allow you to programmatically see an outline of your article and not just visually. Once again, though, Joomla can't fix stupid. So earlier today, I was doing a Google image search and I was looking for images of Donald Trump. And I was looking and I scrolled through and I scrolled through, and then suddenly I get to this one down here in the bottom left. I'll just highlight it for you. Now, it didn't look at first glance to me that that was Donald Trump, but it says Donald Trump news, latest news on, and this is a search for Donald Trump. So who is it? Well, if we zoom in, we can see that, of course, it's Joe Biden. So why did Google say that this was Donald Trump? I mean, it knows Joe Biden. There must be millions of photographs of him. So I followed the link to see where it took me. And it took me to this website, which is the Times of India, which is a huge news site. And we can see we're on a page of the topic Donald Trump. So obviously in Joomla terms, this is probably like a tag category or a tag page or something like that. So why did it identify this image as Donald Trump? Well, let's have a look at the alt text description for these images. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's no alt text description. So what's Google going to do? Well, the next thing it does is it looks at what it can understand of the page. It looks at the semantic headlines of the page. So the first one it sees is H1, the most important thing on the page. It says Donald Trump. Looks for the second heading, Donald Trump news. Okay, so it now thinks this is definitely Donald Trump. Is there another heading? What's this next one? that one is not a heading, it's just a div. So the only thing that Google had to go on was information about Donald Trump. And that's why it misidentified that image. So again, remember what I said before, SEO, good SEO gives good accessibility. So this is bad SEO and bad accessibility. And I know most of you won't have heard of this website, the Times of India, but just to show you how big it is, Moz rated number 86 in the world, Alexa number 114, Ahrefs number 91. So it's a huge, huge website. They must have hundreds of staff members, and yet they make this simple mistake. So let's just jump to the wrong section, 1 second. Right. Apologies, I am going quite fast through this, but there's a lot to get through. So links must be unique and explicit. They must tell you what you will find if you click on it and where it will be. So we've all seen this is a word cloud, read more, select, view, click here, download, learn about. These are all useless in terms of telling you what you will find when you click on the link. Again, fairly standard layout here of some type of blog category. And if you are using a screen reader or some assistive technology, not only can it tell you what the headings are on a page, it can tell you what the links are, and it will just list the links. So if I just list the links, it will just say, read more, read more, read more, read more. So you have no idea what it's about. Because we can also change it up a step and have it to say, read more digital nomad, read more work remotely, etc. So now, if you just see a list of the links, they have meaning. They're going to tell you what you will find when you click on that link. Finally, you can have it to just visually say read more by putting the code for the title to be visible only to a screen reader or other assistive technology. So here we have something called ARIA label, and that says read more digital nomad. So it's taken the read more and it's taken the article title, and it's not visible to you, but it is visible to assistive technology such as a screen reader. And with Joomla, we can do both of those. I forget which is the default, but we have read more link, which will, do you want to see it at all? And the second one, do you want to see it with the title or not? So read more digital nomad, you would turn that option to show. The great thing is with Joomla, if you don't set it to show, so it only visually says read more, it will be inside in the code say ARIA label or ARIA described, and we'll have the actual full read more with title, even if it's not visibly displayed. So once again, Joomla is helping you to do the right thing. And one of the things it can do, the accessibility checker that we've got, will actually go through your page and will look at every single link on the page and let you know if there's problems. So it's immediately identified this very first link on this page, which just says learn more. And it gives you good advice that this link text may not be descriptive enough out of context. And you can see it's identified all sorts of other different types of issues with links, and you can explore that at your leisure later. So what have we learned? Here we have, and now I know why the slides are out of order. So this bit I'm going to skip past because it doesn't make sense just yet. Color contrast is the next big thing. It's one of the things that you will see quite often where if you actually run an accessibility check. And unless you actually understand full color theory and the mathematics of it, you will never be able to just look at colors and get a satisfactory color contrast. But it's very, very important. It's important both for people who have visual issues, but it's also important for if you using a screen, maybe your phone in a very bright room, maybe the sun's shining outside. So we can see all of that. So contrast is really important because our eyes play tricks on us. If we look at these two gentlemen, one of them has darker trousers. I refuse to use the word pants, I'm sorry. One of them has darker trousers. Now, I'm going to assume that everyone is saying that the man who's on the light background has dark trousers and the one who is on the blue background has lighter trousers. But the reality is they are absolutely the same trousers. So our eyes play tricks on us, and it's based on not just an individual color, but one color sitting on top of another, the contrast between the two. Perhaps an easier one to understand here is at the top, text on a yellow background and below yellow text on a black background. It doesn't take much to adjust the contrast to make it considerably easier to read. Or more importantly, it doesn't take much to make it much harder to read. But we should also not just rely on color. Here's a line graph. It was the easiest one I could think of to show anybody. So here we have a line graph. We've got series 1, which is pink. Series 1 is like an orange, series 2 is pink, and series 3 is blue. But what if you have issues with being able to see color? Can you now identify which is which? Well, possibly you can see series 3, but series 1 and 2 are pretty much identical. So it's not enough just to rely on color. So what you can do is always try to have two visual clues. So here we can see that we've got different types of dashes for each line. And if I take that to grayscale, it works perfectly. You can still see the difference between them. In fact, it reminds me, in the days of Joomla 1.0, there was an extension who didn't like the green tick and the red cross next to published and unpublished for articles. And they decided for their component, they were going to fix that. And they wanted to have a green flag and a red flag. But I'm sure you can all guess the problem. Half the users couldn't tell, was that item published or unpublished? And again, Joomla is going to help you do the right thing because this tool, the accessibility checker, will actually run through your pages as well and identify for you where there are contrast issues. This one's a little bit hard to see, but the issue is with that link text there, which is sort of like pale yellow on white. So I'm just going to go back to the bits. Nearly there. Okay, so if we think about that accessibility regarding links and color contrast, we can see that this one is not very good. The link is the read more about Joomla accessibility when it really should be, the link should be on the word Joomla accessibility. But if there's a contrast issue there and we look at it in black and white, now it's much harder to see what is the link and what is not. So what we can do is if we were to use an underline, and I'm just using a dotted underline here just to be a bit different, it shows up with the color, great, and it shows up with the grayscale, great. We can clearly identify that it's a link. And that's far more important than keeping your designer happy, because it's your users who will love you more over a longer term than your designer. So let's jump onto keyboard navigation. There are lots of times where someone will not use a mouse. Now, it may seem crazy. We all use a mouse all the time, every day, don't we? Well, the main thing to be careful with about mice, or not using a mouse, I should say, is to be really careful with pop-ups, because quite often these pop-ups can only be closed by clicking on a box, which doesn't have the focus. So somebody who is not using a mouse, is just using a keyboard to navigate, or is using a screen reader to navigate, can never get to that box to close it, because they will just be navigating around underneath those pop-ups. I don't use a mouse, my confession. I use it as little as I possibly can. But there's lots of people that don't use mice. It's not all, if you remember back at the beginning, I said not all disabilities, not all barriers are permanent. A lot of them can be temporary. So just a few examples to think about. You might have run out of batteries for your mouse. You might be trying to work on a train, a bus, an aeroplane where you don't have the space. You might, of course, have had an accident, fallen down the stairs, and you've got your arm in a sling for the next 6 weeks. How about this one? How many of you in the room have considered this? You're trying to use the computer whilst handling a young child. Of course, there's the classic, someone who's broken their fingers in a skiing accident. And perhaps also a very topical one, someone who's just had a vaccination and their arm is feeling sore and they really don't want to move it. So a disability can be temporary, and you need to consider this as well. I was in a talk at Joomla User Group London last week, given by a blind man. And he was talking about one of the websites he visited, which is for motorbikes. And he said, well, of course, blind people don't really go to websites about motorbikes. And I got really angry because of course they do. And he did. So you don't filter out and say that your users won't be affected, that you have a different type of user, because you don't know. And it might be just a temporary issue, a temporary barrier that they're facing, that you're putting in, and that barrier is preventing them perhaps from buying something from your store. So it's costing you money. So skip to content. Every web page has information that's repeated on every single page. Typically, it would be the menu. And then you click on the next page and you have to listen to the menu again. Oh, no, you don't listen, you're reading. You've got eyesight, so you can just skim through and jump straight to the article. But what if you can't? What if you're having to listen to a screen reader? You don't want to hear it say politics, opinions, war in Ukraine, coronavirus, every single page. Same as if you're not using a mouse and you're navigating with a keyboard. You don't want to have to tab through all of those options every single page load, which is why you'll often see in the top, at the beginning of the page, something called skip to main content. Now, if you've never seen this on a page, that's fine, because when you'll see it is when you hit the tab key. So if you're, in this case, in Washington Post, my cursor was in the URL address bar. As soon as I hit tab, it offered me skip to main content. If I hit enter, it will immediately jump me past all the menus directly to the contents. Here we can see the BBC's website, exactly the same, skip to contents. And here we can see CNN's website, except CNN doesn't have any form of skip to contents. So I don't know how I would ever be able to use this website without, with just using my keyboard to navigate. again, Joomla's going to help you do the right thing because we've got this tool. You saw it very briefly early on. It's called Skip to Navigation. It's a plugin. Now, by default, it's only enabled in the admin, but you can switch it on for the site as well, which I would highly recommend. And when you switch it on for both, it will do something like this. So you can't, again, it's not going to disrupt your design because it's only going to be seen when someone tabs, then it appears, or when someone hits the hotkey, which in this case is Alt-9. And this is more than just a skip to. This is actually taking you through the structured outline of your page. So it will do all of those things. And I haven't created this menu. The plugin has read the contents of the page and has gone, right, we've got one of those, we've got one of those, we've got one of those, and it built this link for you. It's awesome. It's there. Just enable it, and then your website is now better than the BBC's and the Washington Post, and of course, obviously better than CNN. So we're coming towards the final part. The accessibility checker. I've shown you this a few times in screenshots, and it is designed. It was introduced in Joomla 4.1. And it will be getting a huge update for 4.2, which is offering even more tests and more advice. And it's designed to help your content authors do the right thing. So we're going to assume that you've all built your site either using a template that you've purchased or one that someone's designed for you, and it's got all the theming and everything else is there, and it's all good, but it's also not something your content authors can check. So what you need to do is have something that your content authors can easily use to check your articles. So this is, as I'm sure you're familiar with, the articles edit page, but there's a new button up here called Accessibility Check. Now, it's only present once the article has been saved, but when it has been saved, you can click on that button, and it opens up that article with your front-end templates. And there's a little man, the little blue accessibility symbol. And if you click on that, you now get the outline of the page. You even get a readability score. And you get, here it says there are 9 accessibility errors, and you can see them all highlighted with triangles. And if you click or tab, or there's other hotkeys to let you navigate around, it will take you through them, and it will take you to the bits that's important for this piece of content. So that's there for every single article as soon as you have saved it. And it's just opening up that one article in the view. But you can, if you want, turn it on permanently so that you can navigate the front end of your website and see it on every page. Now, you do that by changing the show always to on, which will mean it will be always on the front end of your site. Now, we don't recommend that you leave it on forever, but you can leave it on in order to go through and review your sites. So if I turn it on now and go to my front end of my site, we can see it's as I loaded up this page, it's already said there are 5 errors. And then I can go through and highlight them and work my way through. This tool, this checker, is not about Bootstrap, and it's not about Cassiopeia, and it's not about Atom template. It's about web standards. So it doesn't matter at all what front-end theming you're using. If this thing says there's an error, there's an error. So again, Joomla's helping you do the right thing. And finally, be proud. Tell the world that you care about accessibility. Now, if you think about your websites, just stop for a second. Think about your main website and the links you have on the bottom of the page. So what's there in your footer? Well, I'm going to guess that you're going to have some, if not all, of the following: a privacy notice, terms of use, cookie policy. This one's more for the American audience, a don't sell my personal info link. Again, a copyright notice or a DMCA notice, and a contact page. Impressum is a specific German language version of a contact page. I bet you all have those in your accessibility, in your footer. But who has an accessibility statement? Now, I wish I could see you all now, because I'm sure that with one or two exceptions, everybody's going to be shaking their head and saying no. Some countries require an accessibility statement. They might require it for all websites, or they might require it for certain types of websites. In the UK, for example, any site that has any way connected to government or a public body must have an accessibility statement. I believe every site should have one, because it forces you to consider the issues. It shows that you care about everybody. Because let's face it, why wouldn't you put this on? Because the only reason not to is to say, I don't really care about those people, that 15% of the population. Well, that's not true. We all should care about those people. So I've put a link here, which is to the W3C's accessibility generator, which will take you through a series of questions and give you a document that you can then use as your statement. But there's plenty of others online, all very good. This was just the first one that I decided to share. And bonus, after this session, I don't know about you, but I bet you're hungry. Go to Domino's Pizza and try and order a pizza without using your mouse, just by using your keyboard. You can't. It's not possible. Now, Domino's were taken to court in the US over this, and they have made some changes, but not enough. And Domino's excuse was it would cost them too much to change their websites. Well, I'm sure we all agree that that's a BS answer. The other answer they gave was that they do offer an alternative solution, which is to pick up the telephone. If you've ever ordered from Domino's Pizza, you know it's a build your own pizza system. It'd be very, very difficult to do it over the telephone without having been able to see or read or hear what the options are for the pizza. And finally, some homework. Make a note of this URL, take a photo of the screen, whatever you want. This is an exercise for you all. It will take you 5 to 10 minutes. You'll have some fun. You might throw something at the screen while you're doing it. It's supposed to be a test of website usability. But actually, I think it's a really good simulation of how people who have barriers to using their computers feel when they're trying to use your websites. It's full of examples of where a designer was trying to be clever and it failed. And I won't say any more than that. I'll just leave it to you to go and enjoy it and experience it. And with that, I want to say thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it was quite fast. I covered quite a lot of material. To quote a member of the W3C, the Web Consortium, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than it was yesterday. And on that, I think that's a good opportunity to finish.